In this video series, you'll learn some basics on using Microsoft Project. In this video, I'll cover building a basic Gantt chart from scratch, from a zero base. I'm using the 2016 desktop version, and your desktop version should be similar. The online version is quite different though. There are two videos in this series. Part 1, this video, covers an overview of the interface of Microsoft Project, the ribbons and basic functions. Then I show you how to set up a project from a zero base, a blank Microsoft Project file. I'll cover entering and formatting tasks, entering durations and predecessors, entering resources and costs, knowing where to find the network diagram, and also how to enter milestones, as well as a few other things. In part 2, I'll cover using a template to make a Gantt chart faster, and that video also includes how to do resource leveling. I'll also show you how to bring project data into Microsoft Project from Microsoft Excel, just in case you started in Excel and now want to move to Microsoft Project. So across the top you have the usual different tiles on the ribbon here, and we're going to start in the task area. So you've got all the usual editing tools, so the same as any Microsoft product. Then you have a drop down for some different views over here, so lots of different views here. And then you also have some functions here, which I'll be showing you how to use. So the first thing we want to do is set up the project. So we're going to go to the project ribbon, and just right down the bottom, it's a good idea to have the tasks auto scheduled. This means that Microsoft Project will automatically update the dates in your Gantt chart. So we're going to start here by using project information. And when this window comes up, you can put in your specific project information. So I'm going to say that this project is going to start in May, and it will sort of work up from there. This uses a standard calendar, but there are some different calendar options, including the fact that you could also create your own calendar if you wanted to. I'm happy with this, and I'm just going to press OK. From here, you might decide to change your calendar, so this is where you can do it. Again, you have the options. You might set in some different holidays or different things that you want to put into your calendar. If you want to do that, you can go create new calendar. You can save it as your sort of calendar and just customize it if you want to. I'm not going to bother doing that here. This is just a basic overview. So now you want to enter some tasks and information. So I'm going to go over to this task area here. So in this video, I'm just going to show you a basic layout of the structure, and I'll do an example in another video. So what we want to do is start with the whole of project level at the very top. And when you enter data into Microsoft Project, you want to start with the tasks first. So we're not going to do anything fancy, just enter a bunch of tasks. So I'm going to put deliverable 1, and then under deliverable 1, there'll be work package 1. Then under work package 1, activity 1. I'm going to have activity 2 and activity 3. So far this is telling me that I have a project. It has one key deliverable, and under that deliverable it's got one work package so far and 3 sub-activities. So I'm now going to add work package 2, another major piece of work, and it's going to have 3 activities as well. So what I could do here is just pick up and copy. I've just right-clicked to copy, and I can also just paste as if it was a normal Excel or other Microsoft document. So now that I'm happy with this deliverable, I'm going to add another one. So I'm just going to copy and paste to make this faster. Copy, paste, and this time obviously this is going to be deliverable 2, and under deliverable 2 it's going to have its own work packages. I'm going to stop this for here, but you can imagine there can be more deliverables and you'll just keep going down. Now, at the moment, it doesn't really look like a project. Everything's just in a long list. So we need to organize this a little bit better. So a couple of things, all these different columns can be dragged. So if you can't quite read something, you can drag that in and out. So any column, even this here, you can drag out to reveal more options. So just a note that this is quite flexible. But going back to ordering this correctly, well, everything has to sit under the whole of project level. So I'm going to go to the side, see the little black arrow? I'm going to click on that and drag it all the way down. And I'm going to indent everything. So this little green button is to indent a task, so to move it along. And so now it all fits under the whole of project level. Now, as you can imagine, I want the work packages and activities to also sit under deliverable 1. So again, I can move that across. So now I also want to indent these activities as well. So I'm just going to move those across. So now we can see a whole of project level and things are starting to take shape. I know I want these in underneath again, so I'm just going to move those. Deliverable 2 I'm happy with, so everything underneath has to go in under that level. And again, the activities, I'm just picking up those rows and indenting. And I'm really happy with that. Now, at this point, you might think, oh, actually, I just discovered I have a 4th activity. How am I going to put an extra row in? So like with Excel, you can pick up that row and you can add up the top here to add another task, and it will add a task for you that way. I'm just going to go backwards with Control Z on my keyboard. Another option is you can again pick up that row and you can right click and put insert task that way. So if you have to adjust this, there are very easy ways to assert new tasks. And if you're not happy where it's positioned, again, you could just grab that row, look for the little 4 arrows and drag it down to where you want that task. So I'm happy with it there, and now I'm going to name it. And the name's going to be Activity 4. So all I did there was just to click on until I could edit. But you might be interested to know that all of these different tasks, you can also put in a lot more additional information. So if I click on Activity 1 and I double click that, this little window comes up giving me all sorts of information about this task. So early on, I mentioned to have things auto-scheduled. It's remembered that. It also has an area to put predecessors. We'll talk about that later, to assign different resources. There's some advanced functions here. For example, if there are constraints or deadlines, coding level, all of these sorts of things can be accessed. You might have some general notes about who to contact or some legal requirements or something, and you can also customize as well. So just a note that there's a lot of functionality just by double clicking. But at the moment, I'm pretty happy with this structure just for our example, and we're going to go to the next level. So I want to add durations now. And the way that Microsoft Project works, it's actually better to work from the bottom up. So my Activity 4, I'm going to give it a few days. You can use days or weeks. There's lots of variety in the way this is done. You're just allocating days. And as you allocate the days, it will roll up. So what's important to know is I haven't put any predecessors or dependencies in yet. So it's assuming everything's starting on the same day. Hence, the longest is 3 days, and therefore it's saying this whole thing takes 3 days. We know it's going to be different, and we're going to adjust that shortly. So down here, I'm going to say this might be a long one, 5 days, this one a really long one, 8 days, this one a little short one. So we've started here to put in our durations, and you can imagine we will just keep going all the way down the bottom. But what you can see that's happened here is because all of these work packages and activities fall under deliverable 1, it's calculated that it will take 8 days. So it's looked at whatever's going to last the longest and used that figure. And again, this is because we have no relationships. They're all starting on the same day. So as we know, things don't all start on the same day. We want things to start on different days and whenever we want. and we use a predecessor column to put that in. So again, usually I start from the bottom up, or just this level here. So the activity 2, we're going to say, has to be done after activity 1. So this is row 4. You can see that's got a 4 there. And so I'm going to say the predecessor is 4, this predecessor is 5, and this predecessor is 6. So each of these things is dependent on the activity that came before it. Now, immediately over here in the bar chart area, you can see that some relationships are now developing. And you may or may not be happy with those sorts of relationships. So if you think two things need to start together or to finish together, you can also adjust it. You might also notice that we've pushed out to 11 days now, because when it started to look at this and now these dependencies, it's changed some of these start and finish dates. Again, automatically, because we're using auto scheduling. That's why it's a little bit easier. But for example, if I go into activity 2 and I double click on that and I go to this predecessors area, over here this is a finish to start relationship by default, but using this drop down arrow I could change that. So it could be start to start, finish to finish, start to finish, or no relationship at all. So I could really go to town with that. If there was some sort of a lag required, so maybe waiting for approvals when no real work is getting done, I could also add that in. So this is now saying we have a 4-day finish to start relationship with 1 day of lag. And you can obviously get very technical, just whatever's suitable for your project. So you go down and you can do similar. You might have, for example, work package 2 dependent on the completion of work package 3. That's on row 3, so I'm going to put that there. And automatically everything here is updated. You can see that now. And it's pushed out to 20 days because it's saying that this lot of work has to start after work package 1 is finished. Again, we might decide to put some things in here. So we might decide that these are more or less steps and add those in there. And again, that will adjust all the timelines automatically. So already you should be able to see the benefit of Microsoft Project, for example, as opposed to Excel, as a simple way just to get a schedule done. I've done this really, really fast. The other little things is you can color code. So if you want, let's say, the project level to stand out as a yellow, you might put all of deliverable 1 as, let's color code that in, let's say, blue, and maybe all of deliverable 2 you might color code, and let's make that something different. We'll go green. The other thing in doing this, it's much easier to get a feel and organize your project well, but you can collapse things down. So if in real life we were working on deliverable 2, you could collapse deliverable 1 and just focus on wherever you're at. And again, you can collapse each thing down as you see fit. So just using those little arrows, you can focus in on whatever you'd like. This is very practical when you've got a big project, lots and lots of lines. It just makes it a heck of a lot easier. Just extending that out again. So the other thing we have here is resource name. So you can assign resources at whatever level you like, and it will start creating something called a resource sheet. So there's a couple of ways to do this. I'm going to go over to the side here and I'm going to pick up the resource sheet. So here you can enter the resource names. You can start with the resource sheet, the type of resource that it is, material, lots of different information. So you can put in how much they're working, the standard rates, overtime rates. So you can put in a lot of detail. Even there's extra columns that you can add here. So just know that you can build this up. I'm just going to delete this one. But another way, and I'm just going to return to the Gantt chart view here, is to just simply put them in. So I might say that Jim Smith is looking after deliverable 1 and Jenny Jones is looking after work package 1. So from here it will remember, so I can pick either or both of those, or I can add a third person, let's say Mary Lau. So Mary's doing activity 1. She might be doing all of them, overseen by Jenny or different people on each task. But right now you can see that it's building that resource list. So if I go back to the resource sheet, these resources are now automatically in there, and I can, pick their hourly rates, whatever I think their rates might be. Maybe 70 there, 50, 45, and then it will start to build up costs as well. So in Microsoft Project, there's a lot of different functionalities and reports. But I'm going to now go back to our Gantt chart view. And so you would put in all of the resources to your heart's content. So some other things that are normally in a Gantt chart that can help us, for example, would be the work breakdown structure. So there's a thing here called add new column. So I'm just going to use a drop down there. I'm going to press W, so it goes all the way to the bottom. And I'm going to pick WBS. So here it already gives me a work breakdown structure format. I can pick up that whole column, see the little 4 arrows, and just drag that, for example, right up close to the tasks. And that also makes it a lot easier if you're subtracting and adding activities and so forth in. Otherwise, if you were to put the work breakdown structure in here with the activity, anytime you shuffle things around, you've also got to edit in here. So having a work breakdown structure on its own over here is just a lot more practical and a lot easier. So we have a very basic Gantt chart now with some resources. It's terrific. It's also starting to calculate costs for us. The other thing it's starting to build for us in Microsoft Project is a network diagram. So it automatically does this for us. I'm just going to minimize the view here, and it's already starting to show us in red what the critical path is. So where you might be doing your network diagram by hand, in Microsoft Project it will build it up for you, and it will give you lots of good information. So it'll give you the start date, the ID number, finish date, duration, percent complete. It'll give you a lot of information there. So very, very handy to have the network diagram in there. I'm going to go back to the Gantt chart here, and we're just going to explore the new column, add new column area. So when you drop down, you can easily turn this into a tracking Gantt. So just by doing percent of work complete, and we can track how everything's going. But have a look at all the different things that you can add in here, actual cost and so forth. So you can compare like the baseline, the original, to actual costs. You can add as many columns in here as you like. So if you scroll through, think about your project and just see if there's anything interesting you want to add. The other thing is it does have a bunch of just random text columns where you could add your own notes or comments that way. As mentioned, when you double click an activity, you can actually add notes to that activity there as well. So I'm just going to slide this back because we've got a lot of information. It's, can be a little bit hard to look at everything. A little note that being a Microsoft product, you can also format the bar, so you can change the colors and things, so everything can sort of be adjusted. And the last thing I'll note is if you end up having question marks at the end of any task or level or deliverable, it's because there's question marks below somewhere. So until you define the time frame, the duration, then it will automatically put a question mark. So it automatically puts a day, and it's saying, do you really want it to be a day? And you need to change it. So if you're happy that something's a day, you can just go up and down arrow and it will get rid of the question mark. You can type in, so I can type in 2 days, type in 8 days there, and you'll see that'll fix that one up. These 3 are all question marks as well, so I'm going to go 5 days on that, 2 days, and I'm going to go 6 days there. As I mentioned earlier, these are all assuming we're starting on day 1. We know that's not necessarily going to be true, and so again we can go through and adjust. So if we thought deliverable 1 and deliverable 2 are quite separate, they could theoretically start on the same day. You could leave it as is and just work with the bottom activities. So this one would be dependent on 14, for example. So 14, 15, so they're connected. You might make this one dependent on 16. This one we can make dependent on 18, and this one dependent on 19. And so all of a sudden, by specifying our days, putting in these dependencies, it sort of fixed up our whole Gantt chart there. You could, as I mentioned, have other dependencies. So deliverable 2 might be dependent on deliverable 1. So that's on row 2. If I put 2 as a predecessor to this, then it will shuffle all the dates to make sure that deliverable 2 follows deliverable 1, and our total level of the project will change as well. But even here you can see it gives us good information. So if someone asks how long is this project going to take, already you know it's roughly 52 days. So hopefully that's been helpful just in knowing how to initially set up your project. The other little things to know, as mentioned, there's a whole resourcing area up here. There's a reporting area, so you can look at the different types of reports and dashboards you can get, visual reports, so that would be good to explore. It'll do all sorts of budgets and things. The project one we had a quick look at, but you can have a little bit more. Again, we've got a view, so there's lots of different things here for you to explore, and just general formatting you can do as well. I'm going to go back here to tasks though, and just show you that you can also set in milestones. So we could pretend that after this activity 4 there's a milestone, and we can see this little milestone inserter button here, and it will show up as a little arrow. That's how they normally appear. I'm going to go first milestone. So for your project you will just state what your milestone is, and normally is 0 days because it's just signifying that something's happening. So it doesn't give you any days, it's just something to celebrate. I'm going to change this into the right colouring. So yeah, you've got your milestone there. If you wanted it to stand out, you could do something with it. So all the normal editing tools go, and we know that there's a milestone here. We can fix it for whatever date we like. So you might have the milestone maybe on the 17th. So we could link, and it's gonna go like that. And here we can see that milestone before we get on to the next part. When you look at the Gantt chart, it's sort of showing the hammock or the main activity areas. Quite easy to read. It'll put your resources against different activities as well.